I did Mr. Boddy as my patient, and one of the symptoms that he has is breathing heavily and exhaustion, and that could be a problem with the bloodstream. I mean, not the red blood cells, because the red blood cells carry nutrients, including oxygen, and they pick it up from the lungs and bring it through the heart to the body capillaries, where it's dropped off and distributed throughout the body. And I think so usually it should work, and all the nutrients get distributed throughout the body from the lungs. Except if he's breathing heavily, that could mean that it would take, maybe the red blood cells aren't working properly, which means that they're taking less oxygen than they should be. Less oxygen. I mean, they're taking in less oxygen than they normally do, and that could cause Mr. Boddy to have to breathe more heavily to get more oxygen throughout his body. And also exhaustion and low energy could be because he's not getting enough oxygen due to the fact that his red blood cells aren't working. So I don't know, his body and his cells aren't they don't have the right nutrients they need. Another place in the heart that could not be working is the body capillaries, which is where in the heart, it's a place in the heart where or in the circulatory system, where the nutrients are transported throughout or distributed to the body. So even if Mr. Boddy, even if his lung capillaries are working and he's getting air in, or getting oxygen in, that if his body capillaries aren't working, that could be why he has low energy and exhaustion, because he's not getting enough nutrients to parts in his body. And usually the red blood cells will bring all the nutrients to there, and then it's distributed throughout the body. Except if those aren't working, then the red blood cells could bring the nutrients to the body capillaries, except there's no the body capillaries can receive it, but except they can't distribute it throughout the body, because maybe there's a problem with the walls, like the lining of the body capillaries, because maybe they're too thick, which is means that the nutrients can't be distributed to the body because it can't go through the walls of the capillaries like they usually could. Or maybe there aren't enough of them, so there's not enough surface area for the bloods, or for the nutrients to get out. Yeah. And that could look like, basically, it goes from the lungs down, where there's the capillaries. And then right here, if they're usually really skinny, maybe there's only 2 of them, and there's not enough surface area, so the body isn't getting enough, and the walls are too thick, so the nutrients, only a few nutrients can get out, so that's why Mr. Boddy is super exhausted. I think that one of the organs of digestion that could be causing Mr. Boddy's problems is his small intestine, because he was having he can't transport the vitamins A, D, E, and K, and those vitamins can only be transported with fats, because they can only be broken down in water. I mean, they can't be broken down in water, and they can only be broken down with fats. And if there aren't any fats to break them down, then they can't be transported. So, the small intestine is the only place where fats are broken down, which means if fats aren't being broken down, there has to be a problem with the small intestine. Usually, the small intestine takes enzymes from the pancreas and the liver, and then and from itself, it also makes enzymes, and it uses those to break down fats and proteins and carbohydrates, and then it absorbs them into the lining of the stomach, where it's distributed throughout the body. Except I think that either it's not absorbing the fats, or it's not creating enzymes or receiving enzymes from the pancreas or liver to break down the fats. But it's not working, which means the fats can't be broken down, which means they can't transport, or which means they can't break down the vitamins, which means that the vitamins can't be transported. Another organ that could be failing in Mr. Boddy is the liver. And the liver, it creates bile, which is then stored in the gallbladder. And this, I guess, so the liver, if the liver isn't, so basically the liver creates bile, which helps break down fats. And if fats aren't being absorbed into the aren't being broken down, which means maybe the small intestine isn't receiving them, that means that the bile, could be why the vitamins aren't going anywhere, could be why they're not being transported. But if there's no fats for the bile to break down, the bile just builds up, and it can create blockages in the liver, because it can't go anywhere because there's nothing for it to break down, which could cause liver pain. And usually the bile goes from the liver to the gallbladder, where it's stored, and then from the gallbladder to the small intestine. And what goes to the small intestine and other organs in the digestive system, where it breaks down proteins, bile only breaks down fats. And then the fats, if there's no fats for it to break, so usually it breaks down fats, which then can break down the vitamins. But if there are no fats to break down, then the bile clumps up and creates blockages, and then you get liver pains, like Mr. Boddy. So one of the endocrine glands that I think might not be working is the parathyroid gland. I don't know how to draw that, but it increases metabolism. It releases T3 and T4, which increases metabolism. And Mr. Boddy was showing signs of a low metabolism. And if the thyroid and parathyroid glands aren't working, that means that they're not releasing metabolism. And usually they get the hypothalamus gland gives what is it? Oh yeah, it gives corticotropin releasing hormone to the thyroid stimulating hormone in the pituitary gland, and then thyroid stimulating hormone produces T3, or it stimulates the thyroid and parathyroid gland to make T3 and T4, which should increase the metabolism, except the thyroid and the parathyroid gland must not be working because Mr. Boddy doesn't have, he has a low metabolism. And I think that it's the thyroid and parathyroid glands that aren't working rather than the hypothalamus and the pituitary glands, because those glands, even though they do affect the thyroid and parathyroid glands, they also have effects on other glands that are working properly according to Mr. Boddy's symptoms. So it has to be the thyroid or parathyroid. So at first you might think that there's a certain problem in Mr. Boddy that relates to his symptoms better, except it's actually kind of hard to. You might think that one of the body parts, one of the problems with Mr. Boddy relates more closely to his symptoms, and they might, except it's actually impossible to tell which symptom or which part of Mr. Boddy isn't working, because all of the parts of the body work together. So it's hard to know. For example, the stomach, you might think that would be the problem because the fats aren't getting absorbed into the body, except the stomach needs so blood goes through the heart and goes to the body, which helps power the cells. And if the cells aren't working properly, because there's no blood and nutrients from the blood to help them, then proteins can't be made. And if proteins can't be made, then they can't be made in the form of enzymes. And if there aren't any enzymes, then they can't break down fats because the enzymes are what break down fats. So that may lead you to believe that it's the blood is what the problem is, except metabolism, the thyroid and parathyroid gland are what produce T3 and T4, which produce metabolism. And if you have a low metabolism, it means it's harder for you to break down the molecules to obtain energy. And so if you can't, so like you might think, oh, it still might be the blood, except if you can't break down molecules, that could also be why the stomach isn't breaking down molecules, because if you have a low metabolism, then even if the stomach is receiving all of the proper enzymes, it's going to be harder to break down the fats, and you might need more bile to break them into smaller pieces, because if your metabolism isn't working, then it's impossible, or not impossible, but very hard to break down any nutrients. So all of that might look like Doodlecast crashed again. So basically, all of that would look like this. There's the small intestine, which would be here, and the pancreas, which is up here. Not actually, but in my drawing. And it secretes bile into the small intestines, where fats that are here can be broken down, and then they can go into the lining of the small intestine, where they are distributed throughout the rest of the body. Except if that's like to all the cells. Except if the blood, if the small intestine, or if the cells aren't getting enough blood, that means they can't create enzymes. So these fats here are only getting broken down a little bit by bile, because bile doesn't actually break fats down all the way. That means they'll just be like tiny pieces of fat floating around in the small intestine that won't actually get fully broken down, so they can't be distributed into the rest of the body. And if the metabolism isn't working, then that means no matter what, like if you have a low metabolism, the bile and the enzymes, I guess, won't really do anything, because if you have low metabolism, you can't really break down fats.